It was rough. Musicians Union was there, but they weren't of much help at the time. I was never happy. I guess what drives me to tear things apart.
He was the man who redefined rock, a genius with a smile that hid a storm. At 62, Eddie Van Halen finally revealed the truth the world never knew. The 6 guitarists he loved, battled, and secretly couldn't stand. These weren't random rivals. They were the legends who shaped his fire, tested his pride, and pushed him to greatness. From admiration to betrayal, every name on his list tells a story of genius, jealousy, and the price of being the best. Because even heroes have someone they can't forgive. Before Eruption, before fame and flashing lights, a young Eddie Van Halen sat in his small Pasadena room, gripping a cheap guitar and a dream. Night after night, he studied Eric Clapton's solo on Crossroads, calling him a god and his greatest influence. Years later, when Clapton dismissed Van Halen as technically good but without soul, it crushed him. The man who shaped his sound had rejected him. Yet their contrast defined generations. Clapton, the voice of emotion and restraint, and Eddie Van Halen, the rebel innovator whose roaring guitar became the sound of the future. When they finally met in Los Angeles in the mid-1980s, Eddie saw beyond the myth. "He's just a man," he said softly. "I think I loved the myth more than the person." That moment changed him. It was the day he stopped worshiping legends and started becoming one. Years later, he reflected with grace. If Clapton hadn't existed, neither would I. Whatever he thinks of me doesn't change that. That was Eddie. Hurt, humble, but forever grateful. In 1978, Van Halen stormed the rock world, but Eddie Van Halen soon felt the chill from his idols. Legends like Joe Perry of Aerosmith wouldn't even say hello. "They'd just give me the shaft with their eyes," he recalled. The rejection hurt, revealing a generational divide, the blues-rooted rockers of the 70s versus the innovators of the new era. Perry's world was built on swagger and riffs. Eddie's thrived on speed, precision, and fearless invention. But time has a way of humbling even legends. In 2013, Joe Perry looked back and admitted, "Eddie's playing was phenomenal. He reinvented guitar playing. I was blown away." For Eddie, that respect came too late to erase the sting, but it proved something. Even those who once turned away couldn't deny his genius. Through it all, Eddie never held grudges. "They made me want to play," he said. "I wouldn't be here without them." By the time he earned their respect, he didn't need it anymore. Then came a different kind of rivalry, one born not from anger, but from intellect. Tom Scholz of Boston was everything Eddie wasn't. Scholz was an MIT engineer, a perfectionist who built his sound inside his basement studio, analyzing every note. Eddie, on the other hand, was all instinct, chaos and emotion wrapped in 6 strings. When Van Halen and Boston shared a stage in the late 70s, something strange happened. After Eddie finished a fiery solo, Scholz walked on and played the same solo note for note. Eddie, watching from the side, was stunned. "It was weird," he said. "The whole crowd looked at me like, what's this guy doing?" To him, it felt like identity theft. Eddie wasn't mad at imitation. He was mad at replication. "There's a difference between inspiration and duplication," he said. "You can be inspired by someone's playing, but if you don't evolve, you're just tracing someone else's shadow." Scholz never commented, but their differences said it all. Scholz chased precision. Eddie chased passion. One was science, the other was soul. Years later, both softened. Eddie said, "The guy built half the stuff he used. That's cool. I respect anyone who gets their hands dirty." And maybe that's why their story ended not in rivalry, but in mutual admiration. 2 men who found different paths to perfection. Then came the night that changed everything. Rick Derringer, a guitarist Eddie admired, was opening for Van Halen in 1978. After the show, Eddie approached him and said, "Hey Rick, I grew up on your stuff, but why are you playing my melody?" Derringer had copied one of Eddie's solos note for note. and even ended his set with "You Really Got Me," Van Halen's hit. The next night, he did it again. Eddie confronted him. "If you're going to keep doing that, you're not opening for us." And just like that, Derringer was off the tour. For Eddie, this wasn't ego, it was about principle. His father, Jan Van Halen, had taught him early. If you play someone else's song, make it your own. Eddie lived by that. Music wasn't about copying, it was about creating. Years later, he laughed about it. "It's funny now, but man, I was hot. I worked so hard for that sound, and then someone just ripped it off on stage? No way." But even then, he never stayed angry. "You can copy the licks," he said, "but not the spirit." And that's what music is. Spirit. By the early 1980s, two names ruled the guitar world: Eddie Van Halen and Randy Rhoads. Both young, both brilliant, both rewriting the rule book. But brilliance breeds comparison, and comparison breeds rivalry. Eddie once said he was honest. He said everything he did, he learned from me, but I don't think he did anything I haven't done. It was part compliment, part challenge. Randy Rhoads, trained in classical guitar, approached music with discipline and theory. Eddie was pure instinct, driven by emotion and experimentation. Together, they represented chaos and control, two halves of the same genius. Fans and critics couldn't stop comparing them. Whose solos were faster? Whose tone cleaner? And that noise turned admiration into tension. Ozzy Osbourne, who worked with Rhoads, once said, "Randy didn't have a nice thing to say about Eddie. They were rivals." By the time the world lost Eddie Van Halen in 2020, he had outlived every rivalry, outgrown every wound, and earned the respect of every guitarist who once doubted him. He once said, "If Clapton hadn't existed, neither would I." And in truth, every guitarist since could say the same about him. Eddie wasn't just a player, he was a revolution. Behind every solo was a story of admiration, rejection, pride, and love. Because legends aren't made by peace alone. They're forged in rivalry, heartbreak, and the courage to rise above it. So the next time you hear eruption, remember, legends never die. They just live on through their music. If Eddie's story inspired you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Every click keeps his legacy alive and fuels more stories like this one. Stay tuned, because rock history never fades, it only gets louder. Thanks for watching.